Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Cloud Connect webinar. My name is Nicole Carvalho, and I'm the Customer Care Manager here at GlobeNet. With me today is Gabriel Marcos, who is our Senior Product Director. Gabriel, if you'd like to.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, everybody.
All right, and with today, Gabriel will be sharing some key insights and tips about the potential of Cloud Connect and why it could be a possible solution for you to reach your goals. For today's agenda, we have cloud architecture and cloud considerations. We'll then talk a bit about GlobeNet's Cloud Connect, and then we'll end off with some use cases. I would like to remind all the attendees that you are in listen-only mode, which means we cannot hear you. However, we do ask that you ask questions throughout the presentation, as we will be responding to them, and that's as simple as just sending the question through the chat box on the bottom right-hand corner. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Gabriel, who will lead us through the Cloud Connect.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, so let's put some context to this presentation, if you will. There's been a lot of talk lately, and I would say very well grounded in concrete actions that enterprises are taking towards digital transformation and digitization of the business. And the reality is that today it's very common, and it's actually the standard practice that the infrastructure and even the core business applications, or some of the core business applications for a company, are located in the cloud. More and more of the world's data is processed in the cloud. More and more of the enterprise infrastructure and the enterprise applications are consumed from the cloud. And so the product we're going to talk about today, Cloud Connect, makes sense only within this this scenario, right? It's I would say it's a product for the new world of business, and especially the new world of the IT infrastructure for business. And of course, whenever we're talking about the cloud, and I would say whenever we're talking about information security and in general, there are risks associated to accessing sensitive data over the internet, right? And there's no question that whenever we talk about the cloud, we are also talking about the internet. And some of these risks are very well known, as in, information that can be intercepted, excessive latency. Remember that information security is about accessibility as much as integrity and confidentiality. So all those factors may play against I would say a good user experience, accessing the corporate applications and the corporate data in the cloud. And these risks are true whether we're talking about public or private clouds. And what we're trying to say here is, while we can access the applications and the data over the internet, this is not an argument against the cloud. This is more of trying to show that there's another option, right? We don't have to access the data over the internet just because it's in the cloud. We can use something like Cloud Connect. In terms of sensitive information, because what we were saying before really applies for any type of information, any type of I would say software as a service or infrastructure as a service that's located in the cloud. But it's especially important when it comes down to sensitive information. And so I get asked many times, like, is there really sensitive information being stored in the cloud? Don't most companies just use the cloud for, development or QA environments, and then they have their production and their sensitive information in, an on-premise infrastructure. And the reality is that there's more and more sensitive information in the cloud every day. This is a study done by McAfee that shows the status up until last year of sensitive information in the cloud, and it's estimated that, first of all, there's a lot of sensitive information. Second, that information is usually accessed through some form of credentials, and those credentials can be lost, can be captured, and so that also affects the security of that information. It's estimated that 20% of the information that's in the cloud is confidential, and that includes PII, personal identifiable information, and PHI, protected health information. And so what we're talking about here is not just about better connectivity, lower latency. It's also about increased security within the context that we were describing before. Corporate applications, production environments, and sensitive information now resides in the cloud. So what can we do about it? And what do we recommend? This is where Cloud Connect comes in. Cloud Connect is a GlobeNet service that allows companies to connect directly through a private connection, to their assets and their information in the cloud. Cloud Connect is currently available from GlobeNet in Colombia and in Brazil, and in the United States as well, of course. And the goal of Cloud Connect is to provide a private connection to access applications and data in the cloud without having to go through the internet, right? So Cloud Connect is not a VPN, is not just a way of using the internet in a more secure way. It's something completely different. It's a private connection that allows you to reach your virtual servers and your information in the cloud and your corporate applications in the cloud directly without having to go through the internet, okay? The architecture of the service is pretty straightforward. As any private connection, we establish a link between the customer premise, and in this case, through a carrier or a local ISP, all through our network, and we connect, directly to the cloud providers. We're going to talk about 3 examples here because they're probably the most common examples, which are Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. But certainly, these are not the only providers that are supported. And the goal here is that you can access your applications and your information in the cloud without having to go through the internet, without your traffic or your data having ever to go through the internet. Again, what we're talking about here are true private connections, okay? I think we have a question, Nicole?
Yes, we do have a question. And that question, Gabriel, is, give me 1 second, pulling that up for you. All right, so how many cloud providers are supported for Cloud Connect?
Oh, okay. So currently we support more than 300 cloud providers. Yes, 300. And each connection that we establish is a private connection to each one of these providers. So if you want to get Cloud Connect for let's say, for the sake of argument, 4 cloud providers, you're going to get 4 private connections. And the reality is that more cloud providers are being added almost sometimes on a daily basis, right? So yeah, you can always check the latest and most up-to-date list of supported cloud providers, and you'll see it's constantly growing over time. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So let's go very quickly through these examples. In the case of Microsoft, you could or would have heard about the ExpressRoute service. ExpressRoute is one of the services that we can support through Cloud Connect. And basically, ExpressRoute allows you to connect directly to your virtual machines and data in Azure, as well as accessing your Office 365 and Dynamics 365 applications. Okay, there's a specific set of available capacities for these private connections, and obviously our connection to Microsoft's cloud is fully redundant, so that you can get a secure and redundant private connection through Cloud Connect. Okay.
Gabriel, we actually have another 2 questions here for you.
Alrighty, go ahead.
The first one, can you provide private connections to other public clouds?
We can provide private connections to all of the supported vendors included in Cloud Connect. Right now, it's more than 300. And if we're talking about private connections, we can always provide MPLS services, but that's not obviously Cloud Connect. That would be a different service.
All right, and the second one is 300 cloud service providers. Is that right?
Yes.
Perfect.
More than 300, actually. It's not an exact number. Okay, so we're going through the Microsoft example. In the case of Amazon, the service is called Direct Connect. Again, you don't need to know that specifically. This is one of the supported vendors through Cloud Connect. And this allows us to access infrastructure on EC2, VPC, S3, and Dynamo. There's also a specific set of capacities, and our architecture is redundant enough to allow for a secure and redundant connection as well to these information assets in Amazon's cloud. Okay. And the last example, again, we're not going to go through 300, I promise. I'm just showing Microsoft, Amazon, and now Google. These are the most common, I would say, and yeah, the ones that we most often get requests and questions about. The Google Cloud Interconnect, also supported through Cloud Connect, allows to connect to assets in Google's VPC, the virtual private cloud. So we can, again, we can access virtual machines, applications, and information on Google's cloud infrastructure, on Google's cloud platform, okay? And as you can see in all of these cases, by the way, there's no mention of the internet here. It's all private connections. It's a separate infrastructure to our internet infrastructure and to the internet in general. Okay. In terms of the benefits of the service, well, number one, it's a direct connection to the main cloud service providers. It's a connection to multiple clouds. Each connection gets a virtual dedicated private connection through a physical port. So it's not like everything is, all the data is bundled together. You actually get a private connection to each one of the cloud providers. You get enhanced security because you're not going through the internet, because you get high availability, and also because you get an as direct connection as possible. So you know that when you go through the internet, traffic is going to be routed through different routers, different providers, and sometimes it's hard to predict what's going to happen with the traffic. But in the case of Cloud Connect, it's a kind of like a point-to-point connection almost. It's very it's as direct as possible, really. And of course, this gives more control. It's easier to see how much traffic is being used, for example, and easier to control who's accessing these cloud assets and these cloud information. So again, these are probably the main benefits of the Cloud Connect service from the perspective of the user and of the company leveraging this this service. And some of the use cases associated with Cloud Connect, well, you have the interconnection of hybrid clouds. It's very common today, and it's getting ever more common to interconnect applications and to share data between cloud providers to create business application out of interconnecting other software as a service and platform as a service applications. So this Cloud Connect service will allow to do that securely and with optimal performance. It's also a way to optimize the network. You don't need to get a huge internet connection if you're not going to use it. You're better off getting the internet connection that the business needs, but then all the traffic to cloud assets and cloud information, you know, can go through Cloud Connect. Obviously helps with business continuity because it's a way of having redundancy, not only in the Cloud Connect service, but also because it allows for redundant access to the cloud service providers. It increases security, and I think it helps a lot with the digital transformation efforts, because one of the critical things about digital transformation is performance. And another one I would say is security, but performance is important from the perspective of the adoption of the digital transformation and the cloud applications and the software as a service. If users, you know, don't like it or don't feel comfortable or feel like, you know, they were better off with the traditional infrastructure, then digital transformation is going to go through you know, some bumps in the road. Cloud Connect is one, I would say, one very effective way of contributing to having a successful cloud transformation in the business. All right, so we've reached the end of the webinar, and now we're going to open it up for questions. But first of all, I wanted to make sure that we go through 4 takeaways. Number one, there is a tangible improvement in performance. Cloud Connect actually improves the performance in the connection and the consumption of cloud-based services. The list of cloud service providers is growing every single day, you know, sometimes on a daily basis, as I said. But you know, there's new software as a service and infrastructure as a service and platform as a service providers that are available on Cloud Connect. The service through GlobeNet is available in Brazil, Colombia, and the United States. And last but not least, information security is also improved by using Cloud Connect, and this should be probably the number one takeaway here, because the more we open up our network, the more the network perimeter tends to disappear, the more information we locate on the cloud. Information security should become, you know, ever more important for the business.
All right, thank you so much for that, Gabriel. I believe we have one additional question here for you.
Go ahead.
Why is GlobeNet not listed as a partner for ExpressRoute or Direct Connect at Microsoft and AWS pages?
I would have to check that out. I don't know how you've been doing the search, but we definitely have, you know, several customers for all those 3 services and for, you know, the other supported cloud providers through Cloud Connect. So, you know, I'll write it down and check that out later. Thank you.
Perfect. So once you have that, I'll send it over to the person who asked. And I also have one more question. Are we going to provide professional services to help our clients configure their connections in the cloud?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point actually, and something I forgot to mention. So thank you for that. Yes, so the most important component of Cloud Connect is obviously the connectivity and the private connection to the cloud providers. However, in our experience, um, uh, sometimes establishing these connections for the first time is not a trivial thing to do. Sometimes it involves making changes to the network. Sometimes it involves making configurations on routers, security, and sometimes it involves integrating applications. So as part of our Cloud Connect service, we also integrate optionally professional services to help our customers plan and implement the Cloud Connect service. So this is an important point I want to make. We put a lot of care to say that this is not just a consultancy service that will advise what to do. We will actually implement it for you, and we'll work with you to make sure that the service is implemented and working and up to your expectations. And I would say at the end of the day, a big majority of our customers choose to go this route, not because they couldn't do it themselves, but because it's a way of guaranteeing and that the cloud transformation and that the service implementation will be as transparent as possible. And also it's a way to optimize resources. So, if this is something that you do just once to get it implemented, and you don't have to distract your resources from the day-to-day operation, it probably makes sense to leverage our professional services.
Thank you, Gabriel. We have one other question. Does GlobeNet manage the cross connect and colos at CSP sites?
So we manage our infrastructure. We manage the Cloud Connect infrastructure. What we don't manage is the what's called the CPEs, or the infrastructure at the customer premise. That's typically the enterprise infrastructure that's already in place to support the corporate network and the business.
Got it. Thank you. And I believe at this time, these are all the questions we have, unless anybody wants to go ahead and ask another question. If not, you can always feel free to send us an email at customer_care@globenet.com, and we'll respond to any questions you might have. But as I'm saying that, we have another question. So the question is, are Cloud Connect services are going to have different pricing by each cloud, or is the pricing going to be moderate by, give me 1 second. Or is it going to be by megabytes?
Well, one of the things that we try to do, and I can't say this is going to be true forever with all cloud providers, from now until the end of times, but some of the things we try to do when we negotiate these services is to establish a fixed price per meg with all cloud providers, so that it's as easy as possible and as transparent as possible. So that is the case today. We have a fixed price per meg for these services, and you can reach us at any time and ask for a specific quote depending on the specific needs of the business.
Great, thank you so much. All right, let's see if we have any additional questions. I don't believe, yes, we do. So does GlobeNet have on-demand services billed by traffic?
Yes, that would be our burstable services. It has nothing to do with Cloud Connect, but you can check them out on on our website. But yeah, we do have burstable connectivity services.
Okay, great. All right, so once again, Gabriel, thank you so much for taking the time of explaining Cloud Connect to us. I'd like to thank everybody for your time and participation today at our Cloud Connect webinar. This is the second webinar that we're doing. We will have future webinars that will be listed on all of our social media, so please check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and we will be listing also new products, information. So just to follow along with GlobeNet, we ask that you follow us on our social media platforms. And if you have any additional questions, send us an email at customer_care@globenet.net. And to the attendee who had the question, which we were unable to answer, we will be sending you an email later to clarify your question. But with that being said, thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you very much.